Welcome to It's the Economy. The root of India's standoff with the US is that India is buying Russian crude and thus supposedly fueling the war. That's the allegation. Now, why is India preferring Russian crude? What is the price advantage? What are the other sources India can buy from? Will it be too expensive to buy more from the US versus Russia? For a 360-degree perspective on India's crude import economy, I'm joined by the best in the business, Mr. M.K. Surana, former chairman and managing director of HPCL. Mr. Surana, good morning and thank you very much for your time. What I'm getting into is, a masterclass on how we should understand crude. So the first question really is this. How much cheaper is Russian crude? I did elementary research from that PPAF, the site you said, the Petroleum Producers Analysis Cell. It says Russia is our top supplier as of the first half of 2025.
Good morning to you, Latha, and to your viewers. If we go back slightly, we were hardly importing anything from Russia, let's say around 2-3 years back. It was only 1 to 2%. But slowly, gradually, because of the economic advantage, because of other concerns to have the total demand-supply balance of the crude supply from Russia increased to India. And right now, it will be somewhere around 35%. Initially, when the Ukraine-Russia war started, there was a reason for the suppliers to dispose of the crude which they were already having. Traders were having inventories, and there were uncertainty, and the discounts were high. But as of today, those discounts have tapered down, and this may be in the range of, on the landed cost basis, maybe around $2 to $3 to companies, considering all the things.
Okay, so about $2 to $3 cheaper per barrel for the company, for refiners as of today. That is Russian crude, right? Okay, then the next thing I picked up from the PPAF is India's top 10 crude sources. And that is, Russia is the most, of course, at the moment. Russia, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, UAE, US, Nigeria, Angola, Kuwait, Brazil. Now, that list gives the impression that nearer the country, cheaper the crude. Is that a good assumption?
Yes and no. Because when the refiners buy the crude, it is not just the price. Each crude has got a quality, and what we term in technical terms is a gross product value of a crude. So when the refineries evaluate a crude, it is a combination of the price of the crude, the freight, insurance, plus the gross product value, that what that crude will give in terms of products to us. So there is a possibility a costlier crude may give better value products, and that may be a preferable crude as compared to others. So ultimately, it depends on what is the gross value, and that depends on the type of the crude, whether it is sour crude, whether it's sweet crude, whether it is heavy crude, whether it's a lighter crude, and what is the configuration of the refinery. The same crude may give different values to different refineries depending on how complexity they have built in their refinery processes.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you know the HPCL refinery best, but you would know the other BPCL, MRPL, IOC as well. What is the best, how are they configured? Which is the best for us? Is sour best, sweet best, heavy best, light best? And going by that, which is the best destination source for us?
So the question is that if you see just fundamentally, theoretically, a sweet light crude will be easier to process. Okay. And that will be a preferable crude. But there is a arbitrage available, there is a price gap available between sour and sweet crude. So sour crudes are normally cheaper compared to the sweet crude. Now, over a period, Indian refineries have built in processes which can process heavy crudes, which can process sour crudes, and give a better value. So it will be a combination of what is the differential between sweet and sour crude, and what is the processing capabilities available. But given the refinery configuration which we have, and the arbitrage which is available, earlier definitely the heavier crudes were coming much more preferable for Indian refineries, heavier and sour crudes. But over a period, because of that, the demand of the heavy crude started going up, and so the arbitrage between sour and sweet crude also reduced. So it will be depending on the price differential which is available. So month to month, refineries do calculate that which is better. And based on that, they will try to procure the crude. One more important thing will be that the refineries will have the emission norms. And the sulfur content is an important element in that. And the second thing is the end product specifications. As you know, because of the BS 3, 4, and 6 norms which we implemented, sequentially the allowable percentage of sulfur in the end products MS and HSD had been reduced. It has come to 10 ppm now. So we have to see what is the end product specification on sulfur and what is the emission norms allowed for the refineries. And because a part of the crude also goes in burning in refinery boilers and furnaces, so we have also to manage that. And depending on that, the crude diet of a refinery will get decided. A part of it can also be managed by burning, let's say, natural gas in the refinery, which is lower sulfur content.
Okay. Okay. So, now to the heart of the question, India imported 271,000 barrels of crude from the US, from Russia in 2025. I mean, the highest they imported from Russia was in the first half. If we replace that with US, how much more expensive may it be? I mean, ballpark, I know it's a moving figure, as you say, that at certain times US crude became cheaper in the past as well. WTI also went below Brent. But ballpark today, how much more would we pay if all of Russia was replaced by US and others?
But the question also will be whether US will be able to supply all that what Russia is supplying to us today. Because US is producing, let's say, the highest they produced so far was, I think, if I remember correctly, was in May 2025, which was around 13.5 million barrels a day. And the question is, they will have their own requirement also. So that is one question, that whether they will be able to supply to India. That's one part of it. But the second part is that which type of the crude. The US also will have the sweet crudes like WTI. They will also have the sour crudes like Mars Blend, etc. That's the second part. And the economics, as I mentioned to you, will be a combination of the freight plus the price plus the type of the crude and the product value of that. So that will decide. So it will be difficult for me to say that, okay, how much generally it is cheaper or not cheaper. But I can say that if very simplistically going, the refineries are evaluating the techno-economically all the crudes. And if they are able to buy Russian crude to the extent 35%, it means that the Russian crudes are coming cheaper. And what I understand is there will be an around $2 to $3 on the end value coming cheaper to them as of today.
Okay. So if we are going to get an export advantage, we will be losing a crude advantage. Let us be very clear about that. So is it, the intent of America seems to be to drive Russian crude out of the market. Now, we don't know. Maybe the talks between Putin and the US envoys succeed, then we may not be in that position. But what is your estimate of how much crude prices can rise, if Russian crude moves out?
So the question is, if there are two parts of this question. One is whether India stops buying, then what happens? That's one thing. So as you already mentioned, that we are buying around 2 million barrels a day from them.
Yes. Yes.
And the second thing is, if nobody buys and the Russian crude barrels goes out of the market. So Russia is producing around 9.5 million barrels a day as up to. They are I think the third highest or second highest crude producer. And out of that, accounting for their own consumption, they may be exporting around 4.5 million barrels a day. If none of the Russian crude is in the market, it means that 4.5 million barrels goes out. Right now, the consumption will be, I think, around 103 million barrels a day, and total production is 105 million barrels a day. So right now, there is a surplus. But over a period, if all of the Russian crude goes out of the market, definitely it will drive up the prices. And I assume that it may make an impact of at least $10 or so. But if somebody is buying, and if India is not buying, then the impact will be lesser. And I assume that somebody will continue to buy, because the China is buying, Turkey is buying. So the Russian barrels are there in the market. So just because India doesn't buy, that is not going to say that, okay, the Russian crude inputs, the financial input they are getting will stop. So the total hypothesis on which this whole thing is based itself is slightly faulty.
It's unreal. Okay. Okay. Very quickly, sir, last question. Because the Brazilian president phoned the Indian Prime Minister, and Brazil actually figures as the 9th largest source of supply in the PPAC data. We apparently are importing 73,000 barrels per day from Brazil in the first 6 months. Uh, Is this going to be a strategic point that we build on this?
See, the question is traditionally, Middle East had been our traditional suppliers, and they would be the larger supplier for us. So normally the sour crude comes from Middle East, and the lighter or sweeter variety were coming from African countries. Brazil has increased their production. They are almost, I think, producing around 4 million barrels a day. So that is one definitely an input. There can be one, but no country keeps all its eggs in one basket as far as crude purchases are concerned, because there may be risk involved. There may be technical issues with the supplier. There may be issues related to logistics. There will be issues related to geopolitics. So normally all refineries will try to diversify their crude baskets and have multiple type of crude, multiple countries in their basket. So Brazil will be can be one of the supplier, including all other traditional suppliers as well, which we have, which includes Middle East countries, Saudi, Iraq, UAE had been the major suppliers out of these Middle East countries. Nigeria had been one. Libya has come into picture now. Brazil comes. Kuwait also supplies to some extent. US also has been supplying. There are also Far East countries like Azerbaijan and also had been supplying. So there are variety. India has taken crude from almost more than 40 countries, almost 100 types of crude India has processed in the in this.
Okay, so the final question, which everybody will want to know, given the realpolitik that Russia crude cannot be forced out of the market for practical reasons, what is your estimate of crude price for the remainder part of the year? Even with a red-hot war, crude did not go above $75. That was the maximum it went. So can we rest assured that the average will be around 70 for the rest of the year?
Okay, everybody who tried to guess the crude prices has been surprised, but my understanding is that the current market is oversupplied. There is definitely demand concerns. OPEC Plus has rolled back their voluntary production cut at a more rapid rate than what was assumed earlier. So I assume that market will be oversupplied in the near future. I also believe that the complete outage of the Russian crude may not be the case, because China is procuring a substantial quantity of the crude. Turkey is also procuring. So I assume that the Russian crude barrels will be there in the market. In that being so, I will assume that the crude prices will hover in the range of $65 to $70. Maybe you may get the momentary spikes depending on the news flows and what tweets comes and what the statements made by different leaders of the world and how the geopolitical posturing happens. But otherwise, I believe that the 70 sub 70 range is the most likely in the near future. But if by chance, which possibility is low, if all the Russian barrels are to go out of the market, then it will be a substantial spike.
Okay.
And then we can see 80 range also.
Well, I believe that's also not what the US president wants. Thank you very much, Mr. Surana, for just being the professor and providing us with a textbook to understand the Indian crude economy. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much.